What is going on, guys? We are back at it again. Nate and myself back in it. So we got a game this week, Nate.
It's game week. It's pre-game day.
Pre-game week.
Yeah.
Pre-season game week.
Game week. That's it.
That's what we're doing here. So we got a ton of stuff to talk about, man. I'm excited. Football's back. We had the scrimmage last week. Not really football.
But basically football.
But better football than we had, right? So we got some real football, although, again, it's going to be a little vanilla football. But we got something to talk about, right?
Something to talk about, and more importantly, live bullets and, seeing guys who have had good camps, Keith Ford, some of these other guys get an opportunity to go up against, these other competition. And that's really where, and even Sean McDermott alluded to it this week at training camp during one of his press conferences, that, this is really where the evaluations really start in these games. Not only because, you're evaluating guys that could potentially make your roster, but these are the films that a lot of these guys that get cut are going to have an opportunity to stick on someplace else. So, it's obviously the first one. So it's not the most important preseason game. We know week 3 is really the fine tuning, and you're going to get a better idea of who's going out on that first week against the Ravens as starters. But there's really not much to learn from the depth charts that have been released either to really get an idea of who's going to get the most playing time. I'd have to think, Aaron, that Josh Allen's probably going to get a lot of time in this game on Thursday.
Well, I'm hoping so here, and we'll get into some of this stuff too, because we got a little news to talk about. Obviously, you and I haven't been able to talk about it. Before we get into that, though, you brought up the Keith Ford thing. I urge everybody to head over to cover1.net and read Rob's article on Keith Ford. I thought he did a great job. There's a bunch of video breakdown in there too. Rob had a good take on that, and that running back battle, I think, is going to be an interesting one, like Nate alluded to, that we're going to see here unfold in these next couple of weeks.
I found myself getting into an argument about Marcus Murphy online, on the Twitter machine, which is funny because I didn't really think I'd be arguing about Marcus Murphy, but really all of those running backs have really sort of given. It's kind of crazy because last year going into this, when they cut Jonathan Williams, everyone was kind of like, what? Like, Jonathan Williams having a good camp. He had a good year last year. And it's like, so what was it that Jonathan Williams, why did he get cut? And then they really missed Jonathan Williams, I thought, last year after Tolbert really just didn't play very well in his time. It'll be interesting to see how the running back situation plays out. But we do have to talk a little Corey Coleman, don't we?
We do have to talk a little Corey Coleman. Obviously, real quick, take care of some business before we get into it. Head over to cover1.net. We are ending the $10 membership into the premium. So you're going to want to get in on that. I believe that is ending after the preseason here. So right before the season starts, you're going to want to get in on that $10 level and get in for the whole year. It lasts for a year from the time you buy it, so you'll be covered for the season. You get all of our premium content, access to the Slack channel, access to the film room, all the great things that our premium members get. You're not going to be able to beat that deal because the price is going to go back up to $25 and it's going to stay locked in for who knows how long. But the $10 is the deal to get. So I urge you guys to go get that now. So let's get into it. I said that piece. We'll talk some more business after. Bills trade for Corey Coleman. I know you had talked about it here on the show. We've talked about it in the Slack channel a few times. I did give you props on the Twitter machine when I saw that happen because I didn't think that was going to happen. I looked at the Browns depth chart and I didn't really see a lot outside of the top guys. Like, I know Jeff
Janis. You don't think Jeff Janis is the future there? Or?
I'm a big Jeff Janis fan as a sixth wide receiver guy, right? And I think they have some young talent. I'm not saying that they don't have any talent outside of Coleman in that 4 to 6 range, but I just didn't see a lot of talent where, people said they're stacked. And now we run into the problem for them where Gordon's not back yet. Landry is what he is. He's going to put up his numbers and get his catches. And then you got Callaway. Who knows what's going to happen with that and the suspension, right?
And from the sounds of it sounds like there was also a gun in the car, not only pot and not only a suspended license. So
none of it was his, though, right?
Right. All of it was someone else's, but it just seems to be getting worse for him. And I hate to beat a dead horse with this whole Browns thing. It doesn't make no sense. I know. It made no sense, the trade from their angle. Listen, I hear people talking about, well, they traded Corey Coleman and he was only on the second team off, or he was only the second wide receiver and on the first team because they were trying to trade him. They were trying to prop up his value. That's bullshit. That is not what happened. They traded Corey Coleman because they thought that he couldn't be a complete receiver. And from everything that I've heard from Browns camp, and I've got a buddy down there who was at Browns camp, told me that Coleman was having the best camp out of all the receivers on the roster. And the fact that they really couldn't find a trade partner in the offseason made them think that he had no value. So they literally gave him up for nothing. Like the Bills got Corey Coleman for what it costed them to get Austin Proehl. And no offense to Austin Proehl, but you're talking about two very, very different players. One is absolutely in Corey Coleman that can be a second wide receiver 2 in this league, 100%. I'm really excited about him. I think he still has a very high upside. And I think they really gave up on him when receivers are really sort of expected to blossom right in that third year. Like you come in the league nowadays, a lot of guys can't do what Juju Smith-Schuster did and do that thing where you're a rookie.
Most guys don't, right?
And now like my tweet about it the other day is the Browns went from boasting about all the weapons that Tyrod Taylor was going to have. Now you mentioned it, Josh Gordon. When is he going to show? Antonio Callaway, what's going to happen to him? Is the league going to suspend him? Jarvis Landry, they're trying to play on the outside, which I'm just here to tell you, I'm not a fan of that. I don't think he's an outside receiver. I think he was successful because he wasn't facing press coverage, and he was going up against linebackers and slot corners. That's not going to be the case on the outside. David Njoku struggling with drops, and you mentioned it now. Now Des Bryant looks like he's going to Houston. It doesn't look like he's going to Cleveland. So they're running out of options. I think there was a really, really poor trade on their end. I think that the Bills fleeced the Browns, and I really like it in terms of what this means for the Bills because I think ultimately they found a need not only at the position, but stylistically speaking, they needed a guy that can get vertical, get downfield, and maybe he's not the most nuanced route runner. I don't care. They didn't have one player on the roster other than Robert Foster that could beat guys vertically. Now they have a guy in Corey Coleman who had 20 touchdowns his junior year in college. So listen, I think they won it, running away on that one. Hats off to Brandon Beane.
Yeah, actually, I wanted to touch on that real quick, and then I have a thought about Coleman himself. But Brandon Beane, I think a lot of credit needs to go out to him because we saw it in free agency, and we're seeing it again with this trade, which is patience and putting a value on something and not coming away from that value. So they talked about it, that this trade was in progress for a long time. They talked about it. They went away from it. The value wasn't there. And then as the value became available. So he's not one of these GMs that is just going to, find something that looks nice and shiny and just maybe overpay to go get it. He is going to stick to his value. He's got a good team around him and they all help him. He said that in free agency, they help him stick to his value when he gets off of that marker. And there's something to be said for that. And I think that's a great quality to have in a general manager of not just jumping the gun and saying, all right, we got a guy available. He fills a need for us. Maybe we'll give up a fifth rounder, right? Like what's the difference between, but he didn't. He stuck to his, and he got a great value, man.
Super great value.
We talked about it. There was literally zero downside to this move, right? It's a 2020 7th round pick. I mean, there's no downside to this because even if he doesn't do anything this year, it's a 2027th round pick. I mean, who's that going to be? A guy that may not even make the roster anyway.
Think about the last 7th round pick that has made a real impact in a game. I mean, off the top of my head, I honestly can't think of one, but my whole thing here goes a little bit further than that, Aaron. Like in my piece that I had spent about 4 days putting together, doing some research, asking around, getting some quotes from other beat reporters from each team about 5 receivers that I thought the Bills, former first-round picks, the Bills could target that might be available. Number 1 was Corey Coleman. He was the first guy I put up there. Mostly because I thought he'd be the most available out of every guy, but mostly because I thought he had that highest upside and checked the most boxes for what the Bills needed. The other guys I looked at were like Laquan Treadwell, Kevin White, who just has yet to really even make an impact. Josh Doxson, who is another guy who can't really stay healthy and stay on the field. Another guy from that draft with Treadwell. And then who was the last guy that I thought of? Either way, so that piece totally came apart the second, obviously, this trade happened. But it's pretty clear if you were at practice, a lot of the media members talk when we're on the track, and a lot of us were just talking about this wide receiver crew. It needed something. It just the guys that were 3 to 7 were really all jumbled up together, and they really all brought the same thing to the table.
Sure.
And that's the thing that you're going to love about Coleman is that he brings something that really all of the other guys outside of Robert Foster, who, let me just tell you, as much as everybody loved him in the spring, he is a spring practice guy. He is a no pads phenom. But when he gets the pads on, he's not physical. his body language I didn't like on the sidelines when he wasn't in. You know, he just seems like he knows that he's not making the roster, and I think that started to permeate in his performance. So, yeah, I love it from a number of levels, but the level of that this guy brings something that the other guys don't bring, I think is the key.
Yeah, and I think one thing I want to stress to Bills fans is obviously we're excited. Bills Twitter was going nuts when the trade happened. You saw a lot of the analysts and draft guys kind of knocking on Coleman a little bit just because of that draft class you mentioned hasn't come to fruition yet. I think it was Daniel Jeremiah put out a good thing about Nelson Aguilar, like saying like, you know, this, like you said earlier, it's this sweet spot where if the Eagles would have given up on him like the Browns just did, he wouldn't have helped out to make the Super Bowl run that they made. Like he's a big part of their offense now. And sometimes you just have to wait that time. I think it's also really good for Bills fans to see that and think about Zay Jones as well, which is a topic I'm sure we'll talk about as we talk about the depth chart and stuff. But Coleman, I just want everyone to a little bit pump the brakes on. He's not coming in here to be like some guys get drafted in a higher position than maybe they deserve. And it's unfair to that player because then they have to live up to that draft pick for the rest of their career. I think Bills fans need to understand that he was overdrafted and he isn't going to be the number one receiver on this team. And he might not even be the number two wide receiver on this team, but he's going to be a weapon that Dable is going to be able to get into space. He's going to be able to hide behind Kelvin Benjamin and some of these other receivers. I mean, this is the kind of guy Dable wants in this offense to put him out there, get him open in space, and he can make plays. And that, like you said, that is something Kelvin Benjamin's not going to do. Kelvin Benjamin's not going to catch the ball and take it an extra 30 yards after the catch. Like Zay Jones isn't even really going to do that, right? So it gives you the different dynamic that you have. But I just want people to know maybe to chill out on the expectations of him living up to that number one pick.
This is an interesting situation in how it plays out for Zay Jones, because I think right now, to start the season week one, I think there's enough time. I think Corey Coleman's your third wide receiver. I think that Jeremy Curley has really entrenched himself as the number two target and potentially the guy who gets the most rep share or the most targets this season. I just think he, being a veteran, and it really with AJ McCarron, a guy that understands where he needs to be to make plays. But I do think Corey Coleman fits in that number three spot. I think he's ahead of Zay Jones coming in because right now, to be honest with you, they're really sort of at the same stage. They're really sort of in the same place right now. Obviously Zay's got an upper hand knowing a little bit more of the offense than Coleman does. But I think that truthfully, I think Zay Jones is in the doghouse big time. And it's not just with Sean McDermott. I think he's in the doghouse with Brandon Beane. And this trade to me signals more that Zay Jones has an uphill climb than really anything else that this trade means to me.
I don't disagree that he's in the doghouse. I think that they're going to make him earn back his position on this roster. I do think Zay has enough talent. I've seen people talking about him not being on the roster on the final 53. I don't think cut is the possibility for Zay. I think that would be incredibly silly. I think if maybe they could find a trade partner that was willing to give them some value on him. But remember, he's the second round pick, and they traded up to get him. Obviously, it's not Beane's pick per se. He wasn't there yet, but McDermott was involved in that pick, and they would have to get something pretty fancy, I would think, to want to move on from that at this point. But I don't disagree with you that Coleman would probably go into the week one ahead of Zay, right? If I had to guess right now.
Yeah, no, that's kind of where I'm at. And truthfully, Zay he struggled last year. There's no doubt about it. And where he fits in this offense will be interesting because, I think McDermott just keeps talking about, and I find it interesting that what he brings up when he talks about Zay Jones is how far behind rep-wise he is. From the spring all the way into training camp, talking about him being 1,000, 1,500 reps behind the other wide receivers. So, again, this is all going to be interesting in how it plays out, but I just think in terms of if you have out there on the field Curley, Zay Jones, and Kelvin Benjamin, you really don't have any guy that you're worried about breaking that. You know what I'm saying? So like the only place I could see Zay Jones stealing some time from those three is with Jeremy Curley, because I just don't think that if you're trying to scare a defense, you're trying to create mismatches, you're not going to put three guys who are all really route runners and all possession receivers. Sure. You need to have this type of player on the field.
Yeah, no, I don't disagree with that at all. But I don't think, back to, again, the people talking about maybe him not making the roster. I would hate to see the Bills end up in the position that the Browns are in right now, right? I do think Zay can contribute. I think that depth is always going to be an issue going into the season. One of these guys is going to end up hurt at some point in the season. I mean, I don't think that it's an issue, but Coleman hasn't played a lot of games. Broken hands, a little bit of a freak thing. But I mean, you got to rely on, Kelvin Benjamin, another guy that hasn't been able to stay healthy. So,
and what I like too is if they're going to play Benjamin a lot in the slot, it just makes tons of sense to have Corey Coleman lining up outside of him. Because first of all, that corner, that's especially like if you have on the same side of the field, Kelvin on the inside and Coleman on the outside, that outside corner is going to have to peek himself inside and watch Kelvin Benjamin. Even if it's for a split second, that gives Corey Coleman speed, the ability to get over top. And I just love the idea of having Benjamin and Coleman next to each other, because I think they provide, you get the 4-3 and you get the 6-5. And that's those are two really good mismatch, just having natural speed and natural height. Those are the sorts of things that create mismatches in defenses. That,
and Eric talked about it in the podcast we did for the premium members a little bit too. Some of the rub concepts that we're seeing out of camp, you run those with Kelvin Benjamin and Coleman, or really any version, but you get that speed guy open on a rub. That's really what they're going to be looking for. Get him some separation, get him into space, because once you get the ball in his hand, he can make plays outside of it, which again, these other guys just don't seem to have the ability to do that. We can't rely on that. And I keep going back to, and this is one of my reasons why I think I'm on the Josh Allen start now train, is big plays are going to be what keeps this offense in games. I don't think they're going to be able to just consistently move the ball down the field, little chunks at a time, and really oppose their will on NFL defenses. I think they're going to be pretty one-dimensional for the most part if they go with McCarron or Peterman. So you're going to need big play guys. And I think that's what Coleman's going to be able to bring.
I mean, I hope so. I mean, that's the idea of bringing a guy like him in. And listen, I mean, there's a lot of gadget plays that we've been seeing from Brian Daboll, whether it's, lining up in shotgun and having a guy motion in like a jet sweep almost, and then get the snap and pitch it to the guy running in front of the quarterback and getting to the outside. So they just didn't have a 4-3 guy on the field at all in training camp on the offense. And now they do. And I think that's big.
Yeah. And again, I do want to encourage people to, obviously he is that first round pick. Somebody said he's I think Coleman is a lot better than Zay Jones. I do think he's better. I think he has more upside as far as what the Bills are looking for, but I do think, I think they're both actually right around early second round pick value guys. Very different receivers, but I think I would like Bills fans to think of him as more of a late first round, early second round talent. And I think that's the potential that he can live up to.
And I think it's funny too. I think a lot of people have a tendency when you're talking about trades in general to either really like it or really hate it. It's just, I found it interesting that all the people that seemed to really hate the trade on Monday had a lot to say Tuesday of how stupid the Browns were because of Antonio Callaway's situation. A lot of people saying, "Oh, well, Corey Coleman, whatever. He's only he only had to give up a 7th round pick. He's not that great. This." But also, the Browns are really stupid for doing this. So, I guess I don't know how you can have it both ways, but the paradox that is Bill's criticism. So, I just don't. But did you see though? Did you see Evan Silva said he's now a Bills fan? How about that? And I said, you know what, Evan, we don't want you.
I didn't see it because he blocked me. He blocked me. You're going to have to take a screenshot and show me. Because
we don't want you.
Yeah, he's not allowed. I will stand on a rock. I will stand on a mountain and die for him not to be able to even be in the
Bills. That's right. I don't want him in the Mafia.
No, you can't come now.
He's got no mob ties.
No. And I don't know how anyone could really be disappointed about a 7th round pick coming for any player with any type of potential, really. I mean, it's silly to think otherwise. You're going to see guys getting cut off of rosters that teams are trying to trade.
And honestly,
right now that aren't getting any trade love.
I know that Brandon Beane's probably not as cocky in his thought process, but I have to think that the other 31 general managers across the league are like, listen, the Browns are trying to get rid of him. He's probably going to be something, at this point, because other than Justin Gilbert, who ended up being really pretty bad. The Browns don't have a history of making good decisions at all. And John Dorsey is classic football guy. And, some of the stuff that he's done in this offseason made you scratch your head. I mean, they took Denzel Ward, number 4 overall, with Bradley Chubb still on the board. And, so there's just a lot of stuff that I disagreed with Cleveland. And I'm just not really a big John Dorsey fan. So,
Yeah, and I think everybody got, if you had a chance to watch Hard Knocks on HBO last night, the season premiere, if you didn't get a chance to watch it, it's a great inside look. That it's not a very good show this year so far, the first episode, but it's a great inside look into a very dysfunctional organization.
Yeah.
It is not good. The coaching staff is awkward. They don't seem to really mesh or like each other at all. So I think it's a bad place for player development. So that's another thing to worry about.
And here's my thing. Here's my thing too: is Hugh Jackson was clearly over his head in his first 2 years. Clearly over his head. He's not a head coach. He's a coordinator. Right. And what I'll say is he's a damn good one. I like him as a coordinator. I think he's a good offensive coordinator. Yeah. The problem being is that franchise needs stability, and he cannot provide that. From just some of the clips that I saw, I did not watch it. I don't have HBO. I really don't have any want to watch it. And first of all, that speech that got hyped up, bruh, like really wasn't that good of a speech. It was just a expletive-ridden yell that they were like top 5 speech in Hard Knocks history. It's like,
yeah, that was terrible. I was not impressed with the first episode. So hopefully they'll.
I could have came up with a better speech than that.
I think we're gonna get to see Corey Coleman though in this next episode in the trade. They alluded to that, so definitely Bills fans, if you have a chance, tune in. You're going to probably want to watch it, see what he says, how he reacts, maybe telling into what was going on their end with that trade. But let's get into the next topic here because Bills released a unofficial depth chart. And there was a lot of stuff on Twitter about it. I typically, if I didn't do this show, I wouldn't have even looked at an unofficial depth chart, to tell you the truth. I just don't take anything seriously about depth charts going into the first preseason game. I think there's a lot of gamesmanship. I think that there's a lot of posturing going on. And I think if you try to read into it, that you're buying right into what the coach is trying to do to the 31 other teams around the league. So, but let's talk about, we have a show. That's what we're here to do. So we might as well talk about this. So what were your thoughts? Did anything actually stand out to you that you said, like that's kind of interesting in this unofficial depth chart?
I do. At times I do wish that, Sean McDermott would just kind of come forward with, hey, here's the plan at quarterback. Like, there's not a competitive advantage of not naming your starting quarterback. There's just not in the preseason, and quite frankly, not in the regular season either. Sure. Because I think we know at this point, I think unless you really haven't been to Bills camp and you really hate Josh Allen's been the best quarterback in training camp.
Thank you.
It hasn't been by a long shot, but he's been the best quarterback there. And he brings something to the table the other two guys don't. We've talked about this 100 times. But in terms of this depth chart, I did find it interesting that Andre Holmes was lined up as your number 2 wide receiver in front of Jeremy Curley. I also found it pretty interesting that Rod Streeter was the 4th guy. And also pretty interesting that Travaris Cadet was the 3rd guy at the running back position. So there was some stuff that stood out to me a little bit. And obviously, and I look at the defense side of the ball, nothing really shocked me on that side of the ball. That is exactly what we thought it was going to be. But in terms of, I think that 3rd running back, 4th running back position, are they keeping 4 running backs? This doesn't really shed a light on that. And I think the center position is another interesting one, is what they're going to end up doing there. I have a sneaky suspicion it's going to end up being Russell Bodine, and I don't love that at all.
Yeah, I mean, the offensive line is definitely the scariest part of this whole team to me outside of the nickel corner. I agree. I don't love that they listed them as co-starters. I don't love co-starter listings. Yeah. I guess it might do something for the players themselves. I'm not really sure. I did think it was weird to see Andre Holmes lined up as the 2nd wide receiver, because that's a guy, if anyone here is in the Slack channel for the Cover One Premium members, they know that I'm not big on Andre Holmes. I haven't put him in any of my 53-man rosters that I've been talking about when I'm talking about wide receivers. I just don't see a good fit for him. I don't see really necessarily the need to keep him on the roster. I'd rather keep some of the younger talent. He's okay guy, receiver wise. He's decent at special teams. I think they can get that special teams play elsewhere though on the roster. You look at Tanner Vallejo, you look at some of these other guys. He's not a returner, so you're looking for guys that can just play teams. Those can be defenders. So to see him up there, I mean, I know McDermott came out and said he's a leader on the team. They take that very seriously here in Buffalo. But
if you listened to my interview with Brandon Riley 2 weekends ago, Brandon Riley mentioned by name Andre Holmes as the guy that him and the young guys were looking up to off the field on how to be a pro and how to watch film and when and how much time you need to spend doing that stuff. And I thought that was really, really interesting. The other two that actually stick out to me too, Aaron, on the defensive side of the ball, 2 guys, Tanner Vallejo has fallen back. He started this. Yeah. And if you were at training camp, Julian Stanford is an animal.
He's a big dude.
He's a big dude. And especially because he's going to probably have the versatility to play both strong side and the middle. I think that gives him maybe an advantage. But I'm surprised that Vallejo has fallen back because he is a guy that they did draft. And I thought was trending upwards. The other guy that I thought really interestingly enough was at the strong safety position that Dean Marlowe was lining up instead of Cyril Neal. Cyril Neal has gotten 0 looks with the second team or the first team, and he's not on any major special teams units. Cyril Neal's going to have a tough time making this roster. He's probably going to be a practice squad guy, but I think that's pretty disappointing from a 5th-round pick.
It is a little disappointing for a 5th-round pick. I think he might have been overdrafted, though. As much as I like some of the tape, I think that they saw potential in him. I think they're totally fine with him tucking him on the practice squad for a year or even 2. He comes from a very small school, so that's a developmental guy. He's going to have a tough time getting into the league. It's not like Matt Milano coming from a big school that just changed positions, played against top-tier talent, and they still brought him along pretty slowly throughout the season. So I think I'm okay with Neal, as much hyped as I was when I saw who this guy was, and I see the potential for how they would like to use him. I'm okay with the long play there. Vallejo, that does concern me right there because I really expected him to take a leap forward this year. I think he's a good special teams player too. I'd like to see him on the roster so that they don't have to just keep a guy like a Holmes or somebody that's more special teams than they are a receiving weapon.
To me, it's going to come down to can Vallejo play weak side and can he outseed Ramon Humber? Because I don't think Ramon Humber is playing much special teams. Deion Lacey is scratched in as your number 4 linebacker that I've seen come in with the first team defense when they've knocked Lorenzo Alexander down to defensive end. So I think Lacey's a lock. I think Stanford's a lock at this point. It's all about whether Vallejo can outseed Humber, and I'm not sure that he can play the position. So, or if they want him to play the position. So,
yeah. So back to this Andre Holmes thing. Do you think? I mean, I think that some of what they do, and maybe this isn't the case with the Bills, but sometimes you'll see these teams with these unofficial depth charts putting a guy up top to get him a little bit of play to see if they can dangle him for anything. Because again, man, I don't love the idea. I know you mentioned Riley pointing him out his leadership. I think there are a lot of leaders on this team, maybe not as many on the offensive side of the ball, but there's leaders on this team. And I hate to hold such a precious roster spot on a position that is not very good for a guy that's going to teach people how to watch film. I know that might sound bad, but I think Curley is a good veteran leader in that room. I don't think you need 2 vets. Is Holmes maybe a potential to try to put him out there and see what he's got and see if any teams have any interest in him?
I don't think he has any value in terms of trade value, but here's the thing. Like, he does have value inside the red zone. And from what I've noticed at practice, and another position we should talk about here is tight end. But the other thing that I really noticed is they're running packages that really bring the height element to it. They're, at one point on the field, you saw Logan Thomas, Andre Holmes, Kelvin Benjamin all lining up on the same side of the field. Like, that's going to create a mismatch in the red zone. And so I think in terms of what they like out of Andre Holmes, obviously a special teams persona, but I do think that ultimately his role inside the red zone and what Brian Daboll wants to do to create mismatches. And I think that I don't want to say he's a lock yet, but he's as close to a lock. I know that's not really music to your ears, but at this point, I just don't see anyone else. That to me would have to be Brandon Riley, Malachi Dupre. One of those 2 guys is going to have to outseed him. I don't. Maybe that's Rod Streeter. Maybe Rod Streeter can outseed him. But is Rod going to play special teams? I don't know. So,
yeah, I don't know either. And obviously, while I've said that he's not in my 53, I just want obviously success for the Bills. So I trust in what Daboll's trying to do with his offense, and if they see that that's a matchup that they can create, I'd rather see that than see some guy sitting in the 6th spot, not getting any playing time, and also not a special teams contributor. That's the last thing I want to see. So, again, we're not getting a ton of stuff on this chart. I'm not even sure what they're planning on playing for the ones. I'm assuming it's not going to be much action for the ones this week. So
the other guy, though, too, Aaron, that has stood out in practice, Jason Karoom, the tight end. I think
he's all the way at 4, man.
He's all the way at 4. I think they're going to keep 4 tight ends.
Okay.
I think they're going to keep 4 tight ends. I think because all of them bring a little something. Nick O'Leary has turned into a really, really good blocker, which if you knew anything about him coming in the league, that was going to be the thing that maybe kept him off a roster. Right. He's turned into a really effective blocker. Then they are keeping Logan Thomas. They have packages for him. They love his size. They love his athletic ability. He's a lock. I think Jason Kroom now brings a little bit more of a speed, a little bit more of athleticism element that they didn't have. And I think that they really do like Kroom a lot, and he's developed nicely from year one. Listen, I was talking to Sale about this. They keep guys in the practice squad for a reason. They see something in you, and they want you to develop. And I think from what he has shown on film, and obviously this games that we talked about at the beginning of the show, is the games are going to really have something to say about if a guy makes the roster, maybe not here, but elsewhere. Jason Kroom, if he could put some tape together, he's not going to be able to be a practice squad guy this year. I don't think he's going to clear waivers. And I think enough people around the league have at least heard what he's been doing so far in training camp, because he had a tremendous scrimmage on Friday last week. Tremendous. I thought he was the one player that stood out amongst everybody. So not only that, I think he's dating Terry Pagula's daughter. So I think he's got the streamline in there for that too.
Is he really? Or are you just making up rumors?
No, that wasn't made up. I'm pretty sure he's dating Kelly Pagula. I follow her on Instagram. So
okay,
I got the inside sources, bruh.
I don't know if I'm going to believe that rumor until I can clarify that and catch that one for myself. So,
listen, bro, you know I'm the insider.
He is an insider. He hasn't proven me wrong yet. So we'll see. One thing that I've been doing, not been doing, I did it this week, and I'm going to continue to do it every week and until a starter's named. As you said, you're surprised that he hasn't just come out and named a starter, a quarterback. You don't see any value in that. So one thing I'm doing is on my personal Twitter, I'm running a poll right now, and I'm going to run it every weekend after these games just to kind of catch the fans vibe on this so that we have something on the show to talk about, because people are asking me all the time. I'm sure people are asking you all the time. I'm seeing it in the chat. People are talking who's going to start at quarterback. If you haven't watched this show before, my opinion is I do believe with these, as you can see here, the people, I'm a man of the people, and I do believe that Josh Allen should be the starter week one. And so this week's poll before the preseason game, we had 355 voters. Josh Allen taking 53% of the vote. AJ McCarron coming in second, actually higher than I thought he would be at 39% of the vote. And a guy that I actually thought, because when you see people talk about him on Twitter, I really would have thought his number would have been higher than at least 10%. Nate Peterman pulling at 8%. So fans not super happy with Nate's performance so far throughout training camp. What are your thoughts on this? Does any of this surprise you, man?
A little bit. I think I agree with you. I think that Nate Peterman, I thought was going to get a little bit more, especially because he's looked pretty good. He's also looked pretty bad during practice so far in the first 3 weeks of camp. So, yeah, I do think that if you're there, you can just see the difference in Josh Allen, the live arm, his ability to make throws downfield. And I really, other than, I think it was the first or second practice where I was a little bit concerned about Josh Allen's body language, or it looked like he was angry at a couple bad throws, and he was showing in his body language. That I haven't seen that again. And even Eric, I think, alluded that to a little bit too, when he came down for that first week of practice. But yeah, I really like what I've seen from Josh, and that article was bullshit about him, that he was disappointment. He has not been a disappointment this year.
I didn't even click it. I'm not interested in that type of analysis of the team. I bash a lot of the guys locally and stuff on Twitter, and even our own guys, I'll bash them sometimes. But one thing I'll give them is they're there every day, they're grinding, they're looking at this guy. I'm not going to listen to some guy who hasn't even been here, that's maybe hearing something word of mouth and trying to put a story out to get clicks. Not interested in it. I think that he has flaws still. I think that McDermott.
But listen, like, here's the thing that makes me a little frustrated about just the narrative in general is we all knew any team that was drafting Josh Allen, the idea was that he should sit for a little while, that he was developmental, that he had flaws that needed to be tenderized a little bit. And now it's across the league. Well, if Josh Allen isn't starting, then why'd they waste a seventh overall pick on him? And I just don't know why it's changed now. Like why because the Bills picked him, that he needs to start right away. Otherwise he's a bust, because we know what he needed. He needed a little bit. He needed a little maturing. Yeah. And that is going, and I think this coaching staff recognized it. I think Brandon Beane recognized it, and they want to give him that opportunity. And listen, this is why they brought AJ McCarron in, and maybe they're going to make a trade for another quarterback. We don't know what's going to happen. Maybe both quarterbacks look so bad. Maybe McCarron and Peterman look so bad in the first two preseason games that they're compelled to go get Teddy Bridgewater, or they're compelled to go get Robert Griffin III, who both have looked good in the preseason and in training camp so far. That could totally be a possibility. That's what is so incredible, that we haven't played a game yet, and that people still think, well, this is definitely McCarron's job to lose or Peterman's job. Based on what I've seen, it's nobody's job right now. And I just don't think that Josh Allen has really gotten a fair shot to win this. Like, say, Carson Wentz got his first year. We're not going to see that parallel, I don't think. And I think maybe they're smart. Maybe they're saying to themselves, listen, we know that Josh is going to play 10 games this year. We'd rather him not play the first 10 and then us have to pull him for the remaining 6 or the remaining 6. You know what I'm saying? Like, maybe we want to have him sit for those first 4 weeks against those 4 really good defenses to start the year and ease his way into it. That could be their thought process too. We just don't know because Sean McDermott never says it.
So a couple things here. I don't disagree with you as far as what the national media is saying. I think a part of what the national media is doing is it's a 24-hour news cycle with sports now too. So they're creating stories, trying to create some controversy because they want clicks. They want people to tune into their television shows and have something to talk about. None of that worries me at all. I really dislike this idea that's flowing out there about these first 4 games and basically the idea that we're going to concede these 4 games and play a quarterback that, because basically what I'm hearing from everyone is most people agree that Josh Allen's going to give this team the best chance to win football games, regardless of the opponent. But what people are saying is not for these first 4 opponents. And that to me is tough as somebody that has been in competitive situations before. I know that Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott are competitive guys. That basically tells me that they'd be willing to concede that they're not good enough to beat those 4 teams. And I just don't see that. I think you put out whoever gives you the best chance to win. And when you're playing against these good defenses, I would almost say that Josh Allen even more so needs to be out there because he's the only guy that I see at quarterback that can make plays with his legs. This is a bad offensive line. I don't
think this is as bad as people are making them out to be, though. You know, like everyone is like, well, they lost 3 starters. Listen, they lost 2.
Not that. No, yeah. But starting Russell Bodine has some cause for concern.
I agree with that. I do agree with that. But here's the thing. You know, the offensive line certainly – I don't know how much you're going to lose. Listen, you know, Richard Incognito ultimately – did he play at a Pro Bowl level last season? No. 2 years ago? Absolutely. His first 2 years here, he was playing at a Pro Bowl level. He definitely wasn't at a Pro Bowl level last year, but he's still a good, you know, top 15 starter in the league. I think if John Miller can get back to where he was year 2, I should say, that you're not missing much, that there's not a drop-off there. I know Dukas isn't great, but you at least know what you're getting with him. And to be honest with you, since he's gotten here until today, I can at least tell you that I do think that Jordan Mills isn't getting worse. You know, he's not out there. He's not looking like he's just a turnstile anymore, because I thought at times when he first came in as a starter that he was a turnstile. I think he's gotten a little bit better under Juan Castillo. So, and obviously Deion Dawkins was going to be their starting left tackle over Cordy Glenn anyway. So you didn't really lose much in Cordy Glenn. You got to move up in the draft for Cordy Glenn. So listen, the offensive line's not great, but I don't think I want to call them terrible or bad. They're not the worst unit in the league. There are worse units, believe me.
Sure, there are, but it is a weakness of this offensive unit. And in my opinion, I think, again, the best chance to win is going to be a guy that when those plays break down, we're talking about some of these top defenses that they're going to face in this first 4 games, which I do think that talk's a little overrated. I don't think you can predict good defenses before the season has even started. Agreed. We're seeing the Chargers deal with some injuries already. The Ravens are always pretty good. I don't think they're that good of a team.
I think
this year, Packers aren't a good defense.
Right. I think other than 3 things that you could say are absolutes, that the Packers offense will probably be pretty good through the air.
Oh, yeah.
That the Saints offense will be pretty good, and that the Patriots offense will be pretty good. Otherwise, you don't know what anything else is really happening across the league. You don't know, what injuries are going to happen before camp. You don't know what rookie's going to be a bust that is expected to be some great, addition to an offense or a defense. Yeah. So I agree with you. And especially like if you look last year, 2 years ago, let's go back to 2 years ago when everyone talked about how good Arizona was going to be. Then the Bills wiped them at home. Okay. Yeah. Then last year,
the Raiders,
the Broncos and the Raiders, right. Like they worked the Raiders, they worked the Broncos. So, I don't know.
Yeah, no, so I'm not into that. So, all right, so let's take these first 4 games and let's forget what we think about these teams. I think that the coaching staff's going to have a really hard time. Sean O'Hara was on One Bills Live talking about this. I was driving the other day and he was talking about this. He went to the scrimmage and he liked what he saw of Josh Allen. Same thing you're saying. He's like, dude, the arm is live. Like it stands out from everybody else on the field. And the coaches have to see this every day. They have to witness this. Then they have to go and watch that on film. They have to watch this one guy.
So they're doubling, tripling down.
Yeah. They have to see this one guy who is so much more talented than these other two guys, able to make these big plays. Sean O'Hara said there's no reason to not start him immediately based on what he saw only in one day. And I agree with him, man. I think you go with the guy that gives you the best chance to win any football game.
Let's see him in a game, because here's the thing. My personal opinion is I believe Josh Allen's a gamer. I believe that
I do too. Once the lights come on, yeah.
I believe that when he's his best is when the lights are on and the people are watching and the TVs are on, the cameras are flashing. I think that's when he's best. And if that is going to be the case, I think he's already had a good camp. And I think if he takes a step during, let's say,
one of these games,
let's say that week 4 is where he plays a whole game and he just looks really good. And he completes 20 out of 35 passes or 20 out of 30 passes, it's going to be really difficult to keep him off the field. And I totally agree with you here.
Yeah. So obviously we're going to have tons of time to talk about this. We're not going to stop talking about the quarterback. I know some people may be sick of talking about who's going to be the starter, but it's the topic that, I mean, NFL offenses, NFL teams go as the quarterback goes. You draft a guy with the 7th pick, there's going to be a lot of conversation about him. So that's just what comes with the territory of taking a guy that's supposed to be the franchise guy. We're going to overanalyze it till it's beat into a pulp. But we got a preseason football game coming up. So we've talked about the quarterback play a little bit. I don't know if you want to get into a little bit more about maybe what you expect as far as reps go. I'm assuming this first team only gets 1-2 drives max.
I'd think, yeah. And McCarron's going to start. I don't have insider information to tell you that for a fact, but from everything I've seen, he's going to start. So it's going to be whether or not they want to see Nate Peterman and AJ McCarron get reps with that first team offense. I don't think that it's realistic to say that, because then I think you're talking to your starters after 4 drives, and I don't want that. No. So my thought is that starting group probably gets 2 to 3 drives. If they're successful, I think, let's say they go down the field and they kick a field goal on that first drive, that might be it for the starters.
Yeah.
Then you bring in Peterman in that second team and let them go, because Peterman's going to get the second week. I think Jeremy talked about it the other morning, maybe it was yesterday morning, about what he believes is going to end up how it's going to work out. AJ McCarron game 1, Peterman game 2, McCarron probably in those starters for game 3, and then Allen starts all of game 4. I think that's exactly how it's going to play out, unless Peterman overtakes McCarron or Allen overtakes McCarron. And I just think, based on the quotes that I've heard, protecting the ball, not forcing things, and almost a conservative approach, that all to me leads right to AJ McCarron. My only thing against AJ McCarron that I've seen is he holds the ball too long, and that
doesn't have the ability to scramble,
right? Like Tyrod did when he held the ball too long. But at the same time, I just wonder how much I need to see him in game action, because he did prove in his limited starts that he got sacked a lot. Like, he has high sack numbers in the games that he started and has played in.
Sure.
But is he holding the ball to make sure that he's going through all the reads during practice? That's a point that Sal brought up. That I think is a good point, because we just don't know what his mind process is. Like, during practice, these guys are trying things that they would never try in a game. They're tinkering with their games. They're tinkering with throws. They're tinkering with mechanics. Like, that's what you do during practice. You try things to try to make yourself better that you could potentially take to the game. So
no doubt,
that to me isn't a huge concern yet.
At some point, I think you are who you are a little bit. And I think when the lights come on, the true quarterback comes out, regardless of what you see on the practice field. And I think AJ is going to struggle with the things that we know he's going to struggle with, which is holding on to the ball, really wanting to go through all of his progression. Sometimes you don't have the time. If you don't have the legs to break down a play, or you don't have the arm to really force a throw and make a throw, sometimes you just have to make a throw. You can't wait and go through all your progressions. It's going to end in a bad play. It's going to end in a sack. Not all sacks are bad, obviously, but you'd prefer not to have them. I do agree. I think McCarron gets that first series. I think Peterman probably plays maybe up into the half, and then you give Josh Allen the whole second half. I think you'll expect Josh Allen to get the whole second half of the first 2 games. Depending on how that goes, man, I think at some point between McCarron and Peterman going into that 3rd game, one of those guys has to create some separation there, because in my mind, it's a 2-man battle. It's one of those two
against Josh Allen. I agree.
Yeah. And so let's find some separation there in these first 2 games. Let's sort that out. And then I do want to see Josh Allen get a little bit more in that third game where it matters a little bit. I don't want to see him go out in this fourth game with guys that aren't going to make this team, aren't going to make the roster. The fourth game's always sloppy. I mean, you've remembered some of the bad plays that we've seen in fourth games. I don't want to see that happen to the kid. And then people say, well, he got his shot. And he couldn't do anything with it. So I'd like to see him get a nice, healthy majority of reps in this third game and maybe sort out that Peterman-McCarron battle. What do you think on that?
Yeah, I think that's totally right, that it's really ultimately a battle between one of those two guys and Allen. I have been very interested at looking at some of the other battles across the league because to me, not a lot of teams carry three quarterbacks. It just isn't really done unless you have a young guy that you're redshirting that you don't even want on the field if your starter gets hurt. Yeah. The Chiefs come to mind last year where they had Tyler Bray as their second quarterback. They had Alex Smith, and then they weren't dressing Patrick Mahomes all season. I don't know that the Bills have that luxury, but if they're keeping 4 tight ends, if they're keeping 6 receivers, if they're keeping 4 safeties, if they're keeping 6 linebackers,
linemen,
if you're keeping 4 defensive ends and you're keeping 4 defensive tackles, all of a sudden you start to wonder where are we going to miss a roster spot here?
There's not going to be any room for a kickoff specialist.
Right, which is huge, which it's very important. So, listen, so I think it's interesting how it'll end up playing out. But, I do think that the idea that if the Bills keep 3 quarterbacks, that maybe that third quarterback isn't on the Bills roster right now. I think that's very possible. So at the end of the day, listen, I was very, very surprised at the performance that I saw Robert Griffin play at the other night, the level that he played at. I thought he played very well. I thought he spun the ball really well. I thought he's looked as good as he has since Washington. Like he looked that good. And they're not going to really keep 3 quarterbacks, I don't think. I don't think they can. And they like Lamar Jackson. They're going to keep Jackson. Who's the other guy that really stood out to me that I don't know. He's not off the top of my head. But Robert Griffin and Teddy Bridgewater. We haven't seen him play yet, but there's talk that they might trade him.
I'm worried that talk is them ramping him up to get traded. I think that they know they would like to. As far as the Ravens go, though, that might be a situation where they do what the Chiefs did last year. I don't know the situation of their roster and what they'll be able to keep, but they might try to keep Lamar not dressed for the whole year.
And supposedly Flacco's had his best camp since Vietnam is what they're saying. So.
I mean, I wouldn't be totally shocked if they tried to keep 3 guys. My thing here is if there is not separation created by the 2 that we talked about, McCarron and Peterman, then I would rather honestly keep Peterman on the roster because you got him on a rookie deal. He's a young guy that can develop into a nice backup quarterback in this league. So I would just move on from McCarron if you're not going to keep 3. But we've been talking about quarterback a lot. What else in this game? I think running back is going to be a really interesting one and how those reps shake out. Because personally, I don't even want to see Shady McCoy on the field in this game.
Week 3, he can play the first series of week 3.
Sure. He doesn't need to, man. We know he's in shape. We know what he can do. He's a vet. He's not going to miss a beat.
I don't need to see anything from Chris Ivory either. Chris Ivory's had a terrific camp. He's your number 2 running back. If
Rob Quinn's going to argue that with you, man.
No, I have loved, and I'm not the only one that. And in fact, I think it was Josh Reed, Sale, and somebody else were both mentioning to me, like Ivory's had a really good camp. He's looked quick. And it's never been a question of talent with Ivory. It's always, can he stay healthy? Sure. So let's have those top 2 guys go into the season ready to go, and let this running back battle between Marcus Murphy, Tywan Jones, Keith Ford, and Cadet play out. Because I think at the end of the day, and here's another thing that I want to point out, if a lot of people that say, well, what can Josh Allen prove when he's playing with the third-team offense? I'm just going to tell you right now, the skill position players on the third-team offense have been rotating in with the ones. Yeah. He's going to play with Malachi Dupre. He's going to play with probably Rod Streeter.
Brandon Riley.
Play with Keith Ford. He's going to play with Rick. So, he's going to get an
Logan Thomas is going to get in there.
And let me also just tell you, Jason Kroom, who I've really liked. Right. So, let me just tell you, all of those players are in the NFL, and none of them, nobody that Josh Allen played with in Wyoming is going to be better than what he's going to play with on the third team. So, that I think is important to note. Is the offensive line going to be shaky? Maybe. But here's where you're going to get to see his improvisation. Here's where we're going to get to see his arm strength. So I'm excited for Josh Allen. I'm not going to lie. That's what I'm looking most forward to tomorrow. But obviously that running back situation's got to play out. I have nothing to gain to see from Chris Ivory or LaShawn McCoy. I think they're entrenched as your 1-2.
Yeah, I think it would be silly to you. I mean, I watched that Bears game. They didn't play a lot of those starters for the reason of it would be so silly to lose a guy like
Give Marcus Murphy a shot to win this job. Maybe give Keith Ford a shot. Give these guys 15 carries.
Give them all a shot, really, because I think each and every one of them deserves a fair shake at it. I'm not a huge Murphy fan, and I haven't had him on my 53, but I keep seeing his name pop up, so I'm clearly missing something there.
It's not that I'm not a fan of him. I just like the other guys ahead of him.
There you go. I think he's fine. It's not that I don't like Murphy. I'm a big fan of Taiwan Jones and his versatility. I like what he offers. I know not a lot of fans do. I think he's a very good guy.
I love Cadet.
Yeah, I love Cadet. Eric has mentioned that you think of that Dion Lewis role in the New England Patriots offense. We don't have that running back right now that can be just kind of a gadgety guy.
For his size, he's a very north-south runner. He doesn't have a lot of wasted movement. And listen, I do think I think Chris Ivory's primed. And listen, the last 2 years, he's been a very, very capable back out of the backfield in the pass game. And not only that, but he's a very responsible run blocker, pass blocker. Yes. And so is LaShawn McCoy. He doesn't get a lot of credit.
He's gotten a lot better over the last few years. Absolutely. I don't disagree there. And I think Cadet plays well into what this offense wants to do. I liked what we saw from Cadet last year. I think a lot of people had concerns when they brought him in, saying, oh, he's not really a running back. I think that he did actually a really good job running the ball. Like you said, he finds the hole, hits it. He's got speed. I think that he can play into some of this gadgety stuff that Daboll wants to do, running these jet sweeps, getting guys in motion. I think Cadet lines up perfectly for that. So I think that this battle is very interesting. Keith Ford having a good camp, more of that power back role, a bigger, chunkier kind of guy. I think that is something that they might be interested in keeping with the power run game. So I think there's some choices. I think it's a bit of a Swiss Army knife behind Shady and Ivory. And I think the coaches have some tough decisions to make there that maybe we're not talking about enough.
Definitely. The most interesting thing that I think we can look at with let's keep with Cadet, because I thought you made a good point, is there was a lot of concern when they brought him in because, first of all, LaShawn McCoy was a little bit banged up. Tolbert wasn't getting the job done. He was not getting the job done. And then Cadet comes in and he all of a sudden he's quick. He's fresh. Hitting holes with power and giving them an element in the pass game on third down.
Ran over
and
one.
And then he got that injury, and it just sucked because that injury deflated what they were doing offensively because they had to go back to Tolbert.
And it was a brutal injury. And that's another thing about, not to cut you off here, but another thing of why I'm rooting for him to come back and I want to see him in this preseason game is the last time we saw him on the field, man, that was a brutal injury, and guys sometimes don't bounce back from that. And I think he's worked hard to get back, and I'd love to see him stick on a roster.
Yeah, I'm right there with you.
And Taiwan Jones, another guy, brutal injury. Obviously didn't do a lot on the offensive side of the ball, but people say, Andre Holmes is going to stick for special teams ability only. I think I'd much rather have Taiwan Jones special teams. I think one of those two guys makes the team. Yeah. You can only have one guy that really is your special teams ace. Yeah. And you already have Lorenzo Alexander. So right. Taiwan Jones is that guy for me, man. Go back. Agreed. If anyone has Game Pass, go back preseason last year, even go back to some of the beginning of the season and watch. Kicks. He can return kicks, but watch him on punts. He is the first guy down the field all the time. He doesn't always, people got mad. Oh, he doesn't always make the tackle, but you know what? Sometimes you got to just be the first guy down the field and force the guy inside, keep some contained. Or if you miss a tackle, he's slowed up or he's stopped. Yes. That's allowing the rest of your unit to come down, the other 10 guys, the other 9 guys to come down and make the tackle. It's important to impede his progress as much as it is to tackle. It's important to impede that progress. Absolutely. And that's another thing that, you want to keep an eye on in this first preseason game as we get into the second half of that game is guys. That's where Taiwan Jones stood out to me. And I said then when I was covering last season, I said, this guy's going to make the roster. And everyone was like, no way, dude. I was like, dude, watch him on special teams because that's where it matters in the second half of a football game is who is the guy still getting down there first, making tackles on special teams. So that's the things to keep an eye on. On the defense, I don't really think there's a whole lot to watch outside of the reps at nickel cornerback. I think we know exactly what to expect out of the starters. Hopefully we don't see them for more than a series. Outside of that nickel spot, is there anything that you're kind of watching? I'm looking for Shaq Lawson. Yeah, that's true. I'd like to see him have a good game. I'd like to see Eddie Yarbrough have a good game. I'd like to see what we have in Harrison Phillips. Kyle Williams doesn't need to do anything on the field. So I think you'd like to see Jerry, same thing. Yeah, exactly. And I'm excited to see Tremaine Edmonds for a series or two. Not gonna lie about that. Oh yeah. I'm super excited to see the guys. But I think what I'm trying to find out is, I think that I would like to see the rotation between Gaines and Johnson. Are they going to throw Gaines out there the whole time with the first team? Or are they going to kind of let both of these guys have a crack at it? How much reps is Johnson going to get? What is that rotation going to look like in the cornerbacks? Because I think that's a battle that to me is one of the most important battles on this team, especially now that my boy Leonard Johnson's off the market, man. One of these two dudes has to step up in a really important position on this defense. So that's a position I'm watching. How do you think that one's going to play out?
Yeah, the slot corner position is interesting. I'm not a big Philip Gaines fan. He's very thin. He's wiry. I don't love his physicality. Taron Jones has struggled in man-to-man coverage. I don't know how much he's going to be asked to play man, but that slot corner position is extremely important. So I don't know that we've necessarily I don't know that the starting slot corner, much like another quarterback or maybe an offensive lineman, is on the roster right now. A guy that maybe gets cut because of a young player coming up could be a thing too. I actually heard a story about Leonard Johnson. My chiropractor he said he was sort of a dick. She didn't like him, so now I don't like him, Leonard Johnson, because I love my chiropractor. She's great, and she said that Leonard Johnson was the biggest jerk out of all the Bills players that she sees, and she sees a lot of them. So
yeah, but he's a good cook, so. Yeah,
that's right. It's honestly, Aaron, that's actually really funny you said that, because that was exactly my response to her. She was like, he was such an asshole. Like, she was talking to him, and Leonard Johnson, in the middle of her conversation, asked him, hey, how was practice? Like, what do you want me to work on? Leonard Johnson put his hoodie up and scrunched it so that his face was inside the hoodie, and just stopped talking to her. And she was like, okay, well, you can leave. And I was like, but at least he's good at cooking,
Yeah.
He didn't but
I'm going to act like I didn't hear that story. I'm going to discard that one. Khalid, who's a guy that's always watching our content, always following our content on Twitter, and we appreciate that, guys. We know who's out there following our stuff, and we can't do it without you. We definitely appreciate it. Khalid asks or says that he wants to see Levi Wallace and Sierra Neal, two guys that I was super high on coming into camp. I always fall for these guys, these late round picks and undrafted guys.
Yep.
We haven't heard really anything out of either one of those guys these first few weeks at camp. Expecting them to play late in the game, special teams. Do you think we're going to see much of them?
I think I'll see them with the third team. To me, it's going to be how much does the third team play? I think they'll play a lot.
Yeah.
So I think you might get to see Sierra Neal a lot. I think you might get to see Levi Wallace a lot as well too. So
is there
it's difficult unless they're going out there and
getting
tons of picks during a game. Sierra Neal goes out there and gets 2 picks. Well, he's going to get an opportunity to play with the twos that next on Saturday. You know what I mean? But other than that, it's kind of difficult if you're on the third team to really make a lot of noise if you haven't already been doing it in practice.
And that's kind of my thing is I think Josh Allen can come out, a guy like that can come out and really make a case for himself, or one of these running backs. Right. Yeah, one of these running backs who's going to get touches. It's going to be really hard for a defensive back to really – the coaches haven't seen it so far at this point in camp in order to get them up, and you're not hearing their name. To the amount of plays that come your way as a defensive back, especially in the third unit, it's going to be really difficult for them to make any type of real boost to their stock as far as sticking on to this team in a preseason game. Maybe they can string together a few of them for themselves, but I would not expect anybody to be able to make a jump.
Yeah, it's going to be difficult. It'll be difficult.
Yeah. So let's get to some questions here, and then we'll wrap this up tonight. We got Steve Puzateri DM'd Eric. So when we go live, guys, we put it out. You can get your questions to us on Twitter, in the Slack channel. If you're a premium member, you can DM us. We'll take your questions however you want. You can slide all up in Nate Gary's DMs and ask him some questions too. But we got Steve asking, what are the chances Bills trade for Khalil Mack? And I want to get on this one first, if you don't mind, Nate, because this is one that I've been seeing around on the Twitter machine, and it's driving me a little bit nuts just because this guy is having a contract dispute and that he played here in Buffalo. I know people would like it. I just don't. I think the chances are 0.something% that there's a trade for Khalil Mack. None of it lines up in my head. I don't think that McDermott and Beane want to give up what it's going to take, multiple first-round picks, maybe a player. I don't think that they're going to want to pay him the money
that
he's
saying 2020 7th-round pick's not going to get it done?
I think, I mean, it's going to take a lot. And then on top of the picks, the amount of money that you're going to have to give them. I know they're going to have money, but I think deep in this philosophy of this coach and even his GM, I think they're on the same page in lockstep. I think that Sean McDermott believes in his heart that he can get the most out of his defense from just guys. Mm-hmm. He doesn't need to pay some dude the $20 million a year to be a pass rusher. I get Khalil Mack as a game changer. I get he's a one-of-a-kind generational talent. I just don't think that they feel like they would have to give up the future for any one guy. It just doesn't seem like them to me.
Let me tell you this. John Gruden is grossly undervaluing his player. There's just no doubt about it. He's come out and publicly undervalued him, saying, well, the defense really wasn't that great with him on the field last year. Listen, I'm not a big John Gruden fan. There was a time where I really wanted him to be the Bills coach. I think he's completely out of touch with what it is that today's NFL teams need to be successful. I think there's a good chance that Khalil Mack makes it to free agency without being franchise tagged. That's how stupid Oakland is, and how dumb I think Reggie McKenzie and John Gruden are going to be about this. So why not just let him get to free agency? Why not just let him get there, and then the Bills are going to have $70 some odd million. If you want to pay him $20 million, so be it.
If he gets there,
if it was a matter of that they really like Jerry Hughes and they would be willing to move Khalil Mack for Jerry Hughes, a first-round pick and a second-round pick, I'd listen to that. I'd listen to it. Would I be thrilled that they give him a first-round pick? No. But here's the thing. I don't think that Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott are in the business of trading first-round picks for anyone. I think that they would rather use that first-round pick on a player and rely on their scouting staff than to go out and trade a first-round pick for a guy who already has 5 years in the league. As much as I think everybody around the league, all other 31 teams love Khalil Mack, they know that he is likely, outside of Von Miller, maybe the best pass rusher in the league.
Yeah.
I don't know. And you know what? The Bills could do it because they have a quarterback on a rookie contract. So
no, they definitely can. And I'm not saying that the sign part is something I disagree with. I think if he makes it to free agency, I think he definitely pursues something with him. I really don't know that McDermott and Beane, again, are going to make these Mario Williams type deals. I think that they think they can get stuff done with your Kyle Williams, with your Harrison Phillips type guys. I think that they want just guys that are going to come in and play their defense and do what they need. And I think that they feel like they can just get all of that out of these guys. Now, obviously, if you have the chance to get a Khalil Mack, I think that they're going to do it, but I don't think they're going to give up the entire future of the franchise under their leadership, because they maybe have 4 or 5 years to really get this thing turned around in the right direction. If you give up next year's first round pick,
right,
you're really putting a lot of pressure to get things turned around immediately. Maybe Khalil Mack can do that for you. I don't know. I think the chances of a trade are extremely low. I think there are some other teams out there that might be crazy enough to do it. I just hope that maybe
it's not the Bills. Yeah.
I don't think that it's them, man. We've seen it in free agency. Fans wanted them to go after a bunch of these wide receivers. They didn't come off their mark and overpay for it then. They didn't come off their mark and overpay for Coleman in this trade. Yeah. They waited until they got the value. I just can't see them. You know, they have habits. They have an MO. I don't see him coming off that MO for anybody.
But he is a wheeler and dealer. He does trade. He makes lots of trades, so it could happen.
Yeah, I mean, I would love to be proven wrong. If Brandon Beane or anybody he knows listens to this, tell Brandon Beane to come prove me wrong, because I'll come back on here and tell him what a genius he is the next time we're on. So next question we got from Eric P in the Slack channel. Again, Slack channel is always bumping. It's bumping right now. I can see on my phone people over there talking. So definitely get in on that Slack. We'll talk about how to do that here in a little bit here. Haven't talked QB in a while. Has Trey White regressed, getting burned by KB and Riley? Sophomore slump. No. How has Levi Wallace looked? Vontae Davis old. Taron Johnson, again, the playbook. Phillip Gaines. This is funny. He said Phillip Gaines able to avoid stares of disappointment from Eric.
Trey White, no. I think if anything, it's iron. You know, what does they call
iron sharpens iron?
Yeah. So yeah, there. I mean, anybody that is the size of Trey White and the size of Kellen Bender is going to struggle in one-on-one.
Have some tough days,
right? Yeah. But it's only making it better.
No, I'm not worried about White at all. And actually, I'm really happy to see Vontae Davis healthy. And it looks like in all the things that I've seen, even on catches being made against him, he's hanging with guys. I didn't love the signing when it happened, and I'm actually pretty happy. And I hope that he can stay healthy. I hope that they don't use him too much in this preseason. But I actually like Vontae Davis right now. It's everyone out after that I'm worried about.
Yeah, no, that's exactly how I feel. I love your 1-2 punch. It's the depth behind him that I'm worried about.
Yeah. So we got Woody here. Says also from the Slack channel, how had the center competition played out so far? Something we talked about a little bit. Also, how are the guards looking? Is Miller recovering from his slump last year? You talked a little bit about the center position. Guards, man, I'm surprised Teller has been so non-existent.
One-on-ones, he's been disappointing. He's been disappointing because he's mostly been lining up with the third teams. He's listed with the second team, which is good news. But they had Marshall Newhouse lined up at guard for the beginning of camp, and now he's back out to tackle. So maybe that tells you that Teller is progressing a little bit better. Yeah. But Newhouse can play everywhere. Well, I don't know, but I mean he can move in and out. So they've got that versatility there. But yeah, Teller was a little disappointing. There's no doubt.
I know, but man, just even like 5 to 10 years ago, we thought so much differently of offensive linemen that come in, even that first round pick offensive lineman, saying that it takes those guys 2 to 3 years to really get the game. Now they come into the league, man, and we want, even if they're not a first round pick, we want them to make some type of impact. So patience obviously is going to pay off there. The center battle, I think we both agree that Bodine is probably going to get the start there. And I think Groy is a nice versatile guy that they like, but that don't like him enough to start him.
I do think that they like Roy. They kept him for a reason. They kept him for a reason,
but they signed Bodine for a reason too.
They did. But I also think that could be for depth. They just didn't have it. And quite honestly, Adam Redmond has looked really, really good. They've mentioned him by name. And can he play guard? Because if he can play guard too, then I think he finds his way on the roster based on what they've been saying about him. But I do think Roy is just bigger. He's more athletic, and I think he's better in the run game than you're going to get from Bodine.
Yeah. I keep saying Bodine. I don't know if it's Bodine or Bodine, but anyway, I do think that he offers, and Eric's talked about it, a little bit more versatility in offenses. They played a pretty complex offense in Cincinnati, and I think that Dable is going to want to trust that a little bit more. I don't know. I think what the most disappointing thing to me is that nobody's really taken the lead on that so far, and hopefully that starts to sort itself out a little bit and somebody can take the lead on it, because it's such an important position on the line. You got to have a guy that really just takes the lead and becomes the guy there. The Jitter Show at the Jitter Show on Twitter says, I'll stray away from the typical QB wide receiver topics and ask, how is the punt kick returner situation panning out? Who on the team right now, if any, is banking on kick returners, punt returners to make the 53?
Taiwan and Murphy, both guys. Ray McLeod. And Jeremy Curley. Those are the main guys I've seen back there returning kicks. Could have changed Corey Coleman. I don't know if Corey Coleman returns kicks. So
I would hope that they just don't bother. I think that they have enough guys that have the ability to do it. So I wouldn't put Coleman back there. But yeah, I think that's where a position is going to be won. That fourth running back potentially is going to be a guy that can return kicks. And that's why I like Taiwan Jones again. I think he can be a gunner, a running back, return kicks. He's got such a Swiss Army knife full of tricks that he's not just going to pin you into one thing, and you can get multiple plays out of a guy that's the fourth running back on your roster. He's not just sitting there and only doing 5 plays a game. He's actually contributing. So what do you got coming up, man? We had a pretty good long show here. What do you got coming up for content this week? What are you doing? You're probably going to be on the radio tomorrow.
I will be halftime and post game. I'm actually going to be in the broadcast booth, so I'll get to watch a game for the first time live in like 3 years. So I'm pretty excited about that.
They let you in there?
They do, yeah. Well, normally what happens is Chopin Bulldog are the after the game, like immediately the network post game, and then I'm on after them the station post game.
Right.
I usually don't like to make the tech guys hang around till 8 o'clock after, So I usually just do it from the studio. But I'll get to do halftime and post game from the field this time, so I'll be there live. Like I said, I've been working on this piece for like 3 days, getting tons of. I got a Browns reporter, I got a Cleveland reporter, and I was getting like all these quotes for these receivers about potential reclamation projects that the Bills could trade for, and of course they do it like the day that I was finishing up the article. So now I got to move my attention elsewhere. So I'll probably be doing that this weekend. I'm going to be out of town this weekend. So I won't be at training camp, and I won't be on Saturday on my normal Saturday and Sunday. I'm like my normal So yeah, I would say next week I'll probably have some written content out. Something that likely we'll talk about the quarterback situation. I would even look for something Friday because I might feel compelled to write about what I see tomorrow night.
Awesome. And I know Eric's working on his post for the Corey Coleman film breakdown. He shared a little bit of the video that he was working on in the Slack channel. Again, guys, get in that Slack channel right now. $10. You can get a premium membership to Cover One. That gets you into the Slack channel, gets you into that film room, gets you the premium content that we put out. We did it. Eric and I did a pod, ripped a quick pod after the Corey Coleman trade, and that just went out to our Slack members, so they got to hear Eric and I discussing that. I was asking Eric all kinds of questions right after he got out of the film room for the first session. He had just finished Coleman's first season, so I got to pick his brain a little bit. That's the type of content that you can only get if you're a premium member. And you become a premium member for $10. We're wrapping that up at the end of this preseason. So act now, get in there. The Slack channel is booming. Also, so yeah, Eric's going to have that coming out for The Athletic, the Corey Coleman breakdown. So if you're not a member of The Athletic, definitely go do that. Some great content over there by all the guys at the Athletic Buffalo. Fernando Schmood's coming up after the game. He's going to be posting his stock up, stock down post-game article. Always fun to see his takes. I love Fernando's stuff. Mm-hmm. All the content he's putting out. And then as far there's just definitely going to be more content. There's a bunch of stuff up there at cover1.com or .net right now. Get over there, download the app. It comes right to your phone, iOS or Android. Go on the app, download that. Rob Quinn and I are going to be doing a little bit of a pregame show, something we're trying out this year. We're going to do a little pregame show about a half hour show before the game. Take your questions live. That won't be a podcast, just taking your guys' questions, talking about the game leading up to it. And then we're going to go live for our post-game show, as always, competing head-to-head with our man Nate. A little bit of show off, if you will. But that'll be a podcast also. So if you had to listen to Nate and didn't want to listen to us, or if you wanted to look at us, I understand that too, but that'll be on the podcast as well. So go back, find the podcast on iTunes, anywhere where you get your pods, and download, because we got some great content, man. I went back and listened to some of the stuff, that one that you and Eric did on Dable and the new scheme and breaking down some of that film, man. Go find that on YouTube, guys, because that's a great one. That content's still fresh. That's only a couple weeks old. That really applies to what you're going to see in the game this week. So if you don't know, this is your first time seeing us. Yeah, if this is your first time seeing us and you don't know much what to expect about Dable, go back on the YouTube channel and watch that. They did a great job breaking that down. That's the kind of content you can expect from us at Cover One. So with that said, man, where can we find you, Nate, if people didn't know?
Well, if you don't, then clearly you haven't been tweeting at me.
That's right.
But if you do, you know that I'll respond. So it's at Nate Geary WGR. I'm on Twitter too much. So
yeah, and apparently also on Instagram stalking the Bagulas.
That's correct.
In their relationship. So good to know. He's doing that hard investigative journalism over there. I like it. And you can find me at Aaron Quinn 716 and anywhere Cover One guys are. I'm always in their mentions, blowing those up too. So you'll find me in there, and come over and join us for the pregame and postgame tomorrow. And then you can meet with Nate and I every single Wednesday all throughout the season, guys. Thanks for showing up, and we couldn't do it without you. Appreciate you guys. Thanks.